Hi, everybody. Welcome to this month's Female Film Critics panel. And we're really excited today. We've got another awesome panel for you. And I'm film critic Rachel Wagner. And today I have Sari Cohen here.
Hello, hello.
And we have Destiny Jackson here.
Hello, hello.
Yes.
I'm worried, darling. No, just kidding.
Don't worry, darling.
I'm excited, darling. Yes.
Thank you both so much for coming on. And since you're new to this show, I'd like to give you both a chance to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you got started in film criticism, entertainment, journalism. And why don't you start, Sari?
Oh gosh, mine was such a really roundabout way. I actually started as a comedy writer. I used to do stand-up comedy, wrote for television for a little bit, and then found my way as a freelance writer. Really fell into entertainment journalism. I always say it was like it found me instead of the other way around, but it was yeah, started writing about fashion and then covered music and live entertainment for a while. Eventually fell into movies and television, which was a natural fit for me. And yeah, now I write for a magazine, and I'm a correspondent producer on a TV show, and as you know, a critic.
Yeah,
So
that's so cool. I didn't realize that. I'll definitely ask you more about that. But what about you, Destiny, when you introduce yourself to us?
Yeah, that's amazing. I just realized, kind of to jump on that really quick. Kathy Yan, the director, started off as a journalist and then like went to movies. So like for you, it's so interesting. Like, you did the comedy, then you went to journalism, but as you just mentioned, you're still working on TV. Okay, so that makes me happy because normally you don't see that. You don't see that switch. You see like the opposite.
Yeah.
But for me, yeah, mine is a little, the shortest version of this would be, I've been writing on my, school papers, various school papers in middle school, high school, and then in college. That's kind of where I decided, like, oh, okay, maybe I should actually stick to this journalism thing. I actually really like it. I wanted to be a film and television history teacher. But then I was like, nah, like, let me do something else more impractical. So I decided to stick with the journalism of it all. And I interned at like Hollywood Reporter, The Wrap, PBS. And now I'm kind of like, I've been freelancing for the last like 5 years or so, different companies all over the place. And now I finally ended up at Deadline as an editorial assistant. So that's been pretty interesting. But I come from Netflix's To Doom. That's where I kind of made my big splash in journalism per se in Disneyland. So yeah.
And I'm glad to talk to both of you because I really admire how you've both been able to make the freelancing careers work, because that's definitely my dream, my goal, to be able to to be able to continue to be published and to continue to work as a critic. I've had success as some success as a podcaster, and I'm able to kind of make it work, but I'm still working to get that. One of my goals for this year was to try to get at least one review published in a thing. I haven't succeeded yet. It's all my own, pretty much all my own content. I have been on the local paper here at Deseret News, and that was going so well. And then they changed the editors, and this new editor has just not wanted to he just not wanted to accept any of my pitches. I stopped kind of giving them because it just wasn't going anywhere. But anyway, I really admire both of you that you're doing it and you've made it work, and I think that's great. So I'll definitely have some questions for both of you. But Sari, what show did you said you wrote for some shows? Did you do like spec scripts, or what did you do?
I did. So I wrote a pilot. The first spec script that I wrote was for political satire. I originally thought that I was going to write about politics, and I'm thankful that I'm thankful that the universe did not send me in that direction, because it's a whole different landscape than it was 10 years ago. So that was the first script I wrote, but the one that eventually got picked up was sci-fi. It was a sci-fi fantasy, and it originally started as a screenplay, and then the producer that attached himself to it was like, we want you to rewrite this, and we want to do it for television. So it only got so far into development. It never actually made it on the air. But it was after that that I really kind of took the leap into really instead of boxing myself into this idea of being, well, I'm a writer, so I must work in a writer's room. I got rid of the idea of writer's room and just said, well, I'm a writer, so I'm just gonna write. And that's what I did. I wrote and I put my work out there, and eventually I was hired by an outlet to write about fashion of all things, which of course I knew nothing about, but I was like, I'm in. I'll figure it out along the way. And I did. It led me here. So
So you were pitching like your own original ideas as opposed to like a spec script on a sitcom or something like that.
Yes.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah. No, I had a writing partner, and we had written in a pilot, and then they had asked us to write like the story arc of like the first 3 seasons. And it was basically, as you know, in that way, you're writing for nothing. You're writing in the hopes to sell something at that point. So yeah, it was once people actually started to pay me to write, I kind of had to make that choice of, what kind of writing am I going to do here? And like I said, I followed my gut, followed my heart.
That's so cool. Wow. So
are you sure they're not using your sci-fi script for Rings of Power or anything? I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Real. I still think the whole thing was about 2020, and it was a prophecy, and there's still a lot that I see out there every once in a while that I go, I'm such a sci-fi nerd at heart. Everything sci-fi. So I'm like, there's parts of me that would love to revive that one day. It would have to be rewritten, obviously, but
Sorry, Rachel.
No, you're fine. I'm glad. So Destiny, on your Twitter, at least your handle, you have a bunch of different places that you write for on there. And I'm just curious how you are able to kind of make your pitches and get published in so many different outlets.
Yeah, that's a great question, because again, like I didn't have a lot of resources growing up, and no one taught me the journalism thing. And I honestly think journalism classes at college can be somewhat of a scam. Now, I didn't go to J school, but I did go to, I went to a Cal State, and I did major in journalism, but they don't teach you about freelance.
Right.
They don't teach you the tools of how to be successful, right? What is successful? Because some freelancers make, like, I don't know, 20K a year or 30K or whatever. And it's like, that's not me, but anyways, so I really had to kind of just figure out like, what kind of journalist did I want to be? Like, this journalism is not stable, and getting staffed is damn near impossible. So it was either give up on this thing that I've been doing literally since middle school, essentially, or just kind of figure out, all right, like, I'm here, what's the most aggressive way to approach this? And I kind of just took a page out of the white man's handbook. I think I really had to. I had to kind of just be like, if so-and-so, who writes at, I don't know, the New York Times or whatever it is, can write a review, then why can't I pitch a similar idea to, I can't obviously go to, New York Times right out of the gate, but damn, I could talk to like EW or something like that, or TV Guide. TV Guide's one of the places that I write for. So I think not that you asked for my advice, but I think the way to answer this question is that the reason why I'm able to write at like, TV Guide, Movie Maker magazine, or Script magazine, or now the Academy that has their own publication online, the Academy meaning, like the people who put on the Oscars and stuff like that.
Yeah, I wondered about that. What that was.
And honestly, I'll share that contact information with you when we're done here. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the way that I was able to do this is literally just cold pitching. That's really what you have to do. And I know a lot of people are like, well, be wary of cold pitches, but I think you need to be used to cold pitching. Like, don't be afraid to pitch, because either you hold on to that idea and like you're like, oh, you fret on it, or you just throw it out to the ether. Of course you're
Mhm.
going to get rejected every once in a while. I've pitched LA Times hella times, and they never, I'm like, why won't LA Times take a pitch, but I can take the Academy will take my
Mhm.
pitch? You know what I mean? It's just, it's so wacky. Or for you, Deseret, and it's like, I don't know if you've ever talked to, Salt Lake Tribune or anything like that, but anyway,
Mhm.
so I think just being kind of like aggressive in a sense where it's like, I'm gonna cold pitch these people and not be afraid to do it, but also kind of have like a personality. I'm always kind of funny when I send a pitch, like, I'll do a dumb little joke or something like that, or a little aside, like I did a Ted Lasso quote one time, and so people will be like, oh, like, I'm sorry I can't take this pitch, but why don't you continue pitching me, and instead of
Mhm.
just the flat no. So
Yeah.
I
How do
hope that
you
helps.
even
Sorry, that's a
get
long answer.
do you get those just one contact kind of leads to another contact, or because that's one thing I've struggled with is just even with Salt Lake Tribune, I've had a hard time
Yeah.
finding anybody to I've had a hard time finding contact for them.
Yeah, so in those cases where you can't, like, for example, Roger Ebert is another one that
Hmm.
never accepted my pitches, but I couldn't even find like their email or
Yeah,
anything like
yeah.
that. I had to do some serious sleuthing,
Hmm.
and Twitter is a valuable tool for that. Some of the jobs that I have gotten for writing have come from Twitter. And that's me again, like connecting, like typing into the search bar, for example, Roger Ebert, and seeing like kind of what pops up. And then I found two of the editors. One
Oh,
of the editors
smart.
had their email in their bio by chance, but the other one didn't. That was a very difficult find though. So that's kind of how I approach that in particular. And then when I
Yeah.
emailed that one Roger Ebert person, they were like, actually, you need to talk to so and so.
Hmm.
Time Magazine was another one, almost nearly impossible. And then I had emailed a person from there. It was the fashion person, and I was pitching a movie thing. I was like, hey, I know you're the fashion person, but I have this pitch for a TV show. And they were like, oh, then you need to contact. But that's not always the case. Some people aren't nice like that. They just
Yeah.
ignore your email. But I would say in your case, Twitter is a very good tool for like just finding out those kind of
That
things.
is so
Emails.
helpful. Yes, very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Well,
You kind of have to plug and play. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, Sari, so you write for Hollywood First Look, and how did you get connected with them? How did that all happen?
Gosh, well, see, I'm Desiree's. Destiny. It's the same. It was so similar. When I started, I was just kind of cold pitching, and I had cold pitched to Cracked first, and I had one story with Cracked that went viral.
Mm.
And then from Cracked kind of went on to Screen Rant. But it was really, I was writing for another outlet altogether. I was covering music and live entertainment for Axis. And so I was on carpets doing that. And it was just really meeting people. It was just
Yeah.
kind of, became really good friends with my now producer. And she was like, we kind of want somebody to write movie reviews. How do you feel about that? And as a journalist, being kind of like independent, at first it was very hard for me to give my opinion. I was
Yeah.
like, I always felt like I should just kind of give the facts and let everybody else make up their own mind about whether or not they wanted to enjoy something or not.
Hmm.
So that was a hard lesson to learn, but I started writing movie reviews for them. And then eventually they brought me on camera. Eventually it became, we need a host and you have this experience, and why don't you step in? And that led to also an associate producer position, and then eventually producing. So yeah, that's pretty much my regular gig, is just doing on air, mostly on air for them. I do run the website as well. And then I also write for In Love magazine, which up until 2020 was in print, which was
Hmm.
pretty cool too.
Yeah.
So
Was that how you got your the initial roles with Access, you were saying? Was through your connections that you had?
well, they was so strange. They found me because I was writing for that fashion column. I had that
Oh.
first job at that I had started. That was just, again, I had applied to write for politics, and I pitched them, like you were saying, Destiny, it was like, just throw out, just cold pitch. Yeah,
Yeah.
I pitched them on like 3 different, they were looking for a lifestyle writer and a political writer. And so I threw out a bunch of pitches, and eventually they got back to me and they said, we'd like to put you in charge of LA fashion trends. And I just laughed. Like, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I guess, so it was because I really didn't know much about fashion or trends. I was able to make the column my own. It
Mhm.
became more about in personality and embracing who you are and expression, and how you can express that through things that can be trendy. That turned into doing interviews, and then I was eventually contacted by Axis, random email one day that was like, hey, would you like to come cover music and live entertainment for us? And I was like, you bet. That's a yes. That's a
Yeah.
hard yes.
Are you a fan of Rachel's reviews? Do you look forward to Family Movie Night, Female Film Critics panels, or the Talking Disney podcast? If so, please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a Patreon. As a patron, you get to access monthly events such as the watch-alongs and Q&As, where you get to talk to stars and find out the behind the scenes of the movie making industry. And you can pick what I review for Family Movie Night, or even become a guest on the podcast. Podcasts and YouTube channels are expensive, and I really, really could use your help. I would so appreciate it. You also get to be a member of the Facebook group where we talk about all the films that we're seeing, and we have so much fun. Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies and select one of the Rachel's fan tiers. That's patreon.com/hallmarkies. It's kind of like recently I did my first red carpet at what's called Christmas Con, because I cover Hallmark movies on my podcast, Hallmarkies podcast.
I love those.
Yeah, oh great.
I do. I eat them up. They're cheesy as hell, but
Yes.
I do. Num, 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 num. Yeah,
We'll have to have you on for Hallmarkies podcast one of these days.
that's so funny.
Yeah, and so it was wild, because they were like, do you want to cover the red carpet? And I'm like, okay, sure. And we get there, and they have us in between our little, a little podcast. I'm very proud of it, but like, in the world of media, it's very small. But they had us in between E! News and People Magazine, and I'm just like, what is this life I'm living? Like, this is so wild. It was really surreal. But that kind of brings up another question I have for both of you. So you both like cover junkets and do interviews and things like that, but then you both write reviews. So, and that's something I do as well. I do a lot of interviews, and I also, write reviews, and it can be challenging to stay objective and not let the interview impact your. Luckily, I usually interview the people before I've seen the movie, so I don't. So that would be awkward if I didn't like it. But anyway, I think it can be hard to not let that personal interaction impact your objective critique of the films. And so I'm curious from both of you how you manage that. What do you think about that, Destiny?
So very brief. I have had the hard. I wonder if I should say who. There's a movie coming out very soon, and I have been talking about it for months with the publicist about interviewing the particular director, and not the director. He wrote this particular film that's coming out at the end of this month, and he made a big accusation in Variety. Anyone who's good at the clues coming out this month. But I've been having a hard time with the PR stuff for this particular comedian making this movie at the end of the month. And I have still, I have contacted them, and they're like, yeah, okay, sure. Like, you can talk to this person, And the movie comes out September 30th, and yet no screening, nothing. And I'm having a really hard, I'm like, am I going to review this movie? And this is like my first encounter with this particular thing. And I'm like, I think I've decided I'm not going to review the movie, not out of spite, but I think I'm just so upset with how the PR person handled my request to talk to this person, and I'm wondering if the talent knows their PR person is like this. And I'm like, anyway,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to review this movie. It's the point, and that's okay, and that's
Yeah.
okay. So sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
no, sometimes
Yeah.
you do have to decide. I'm not going to review it. Recently, there one of the co-hosts of Hallmark's podcast, she's an actress as well, and she was in one of these movie of the week movies, and I'm really close to her, and I just didn't feel like I could, even though
Mhm.
it's not on Rotten Tomatoes or anything like that, but I just didn't feel like I could be objective. And so I had let other girls on the podcast cover it.
Good.
Because
Yeah.
I don't know, I didn't want to say anything that would, I didn't want to say anything that wasn't true. And I did end up enjoying the film. But I don't know, I just felt like it was just too close. We were too good of friends. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. And then also just when you have those negative experiences with the behind the scenes of a film, a lot of times you might get that in a festival where somebody's like rude or something like that, and you try to like not have it impact your kind of feeling of the film, because it's just not
Yeah.
it's not fair. But
I
I can understand what you're
Yeah.
saying.
And I
Yeah.
think it's pretty easy to do because there's definitely movies that I don't like and I still have to do interviews for them. Bodies, Bodies,
Hmm.
Bodies, I'm not scared to say, was one of those films. Like I
Hmm.
watched the movie and I was like, oh, I don't really like this, but I had to talk to the director the next day.
Yeah.
For me, it's like easy to switch the two, like because one is just about the technical aspects of the movie. Like I like the technical aspects of the movie. I just didn't like how the movie, was put
Yeah.
together, like in terms of the script, but yeah, this particular PR interactions, girl, okay.
When
Mm-mm. I was like, let me leave this alone.
if I'm asking the actress or actor, what was it like shooting that film? Like, what was it like with those kinds of questions? That might be a hint that I didn't
There's a
love it,
way,
you
yeah,
know?
there, you got it, exactly, there's a way. So yeah, why did you
But a
take
lot of
this long?
times I haven't
Exactly.
seen it because that gives me kind of an out. I'm just like
That's
it's
got to be
pressed
tough.
before.
I've only
So,
maybe done one or two interviews where I hadn't seen the movie beforehand. I
yeah.
really, yeah. But anyway,
Yeah, it depends, because sometimes you want to get deep down and really talk about the movie. But then I mean, these when you're talking about Hallmark movies, there's like not like a ton of spoilers or things like that. They're really
yeah.
like, so uh, but most of the time I enjoy the Hallmark movies, and so it's usually fine. And like I said, I usually am just finding out about them and their life and how they got started and this kind of thing. So it works out. I haven't had very much pushback. There was a writer actually that I interviewed that after I didn't care for the movie, and she reached out to me and she was like, oh, it was hard for her, but it was fine. And so that's about as bad as I've gotten as far as like pushback on that level. But
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
we usually try to keep it pretty light and fun. So
Yeah.
we try not to be too mean in our critiques. But what do you think about that? I know you do, Sarah, you do a lot of interviews. How do you kind of do that? And then when writing your reviews?
I think it's where you put your focus. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a part of being a critic. And this was the one thing that my producer, when I first started writing reviews, she had said to me, she's like, your story is great, but you're missing your opinion.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, gosh, you're right, I guess. So it really, like when you're doing carpets, a lot of times you don't get to screen the movie ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Junkets more so you will get to screen the series or the movie. For me, I come at it as as a fan, like I think about what influenced
Mm-hmm.
me when I was younger, the things that really made me want to be in entertainment, the movies that I saw, the way that it made me feel. Um, and I think there's kind of like an art to the interview,
Mm-hmm.
um, where it is about connection.
Mm-hmm.
Every story is your own to create, and the conversations that you have with people are unique because of who you are and who they are and what that brings out of them. So
Mm-hmm.
really think it is about where you put your focus. Like I've been in a situation where I've interviewed a cast lovely cast, the nicest people you ever want to meet, and they were so proud of this. It was a television movie that they had done, and the movie was horrible. It was just, it was
Yeah.
painful, and it never should have been made, but they were so lovely, and my focus was not, and again, that came back to me being like, is it my job to really say this is good or this is bad? Because that's up to the viewer. It's still up to the viewer. I'm just still there to give them the facts. So
Yeah.
what I'm going to talk about is who they are as artists, what inspired them, and what they went through making the movie.
Yeah.
And then let the reader then decide whether or not they want to watch the movie. And then they can form their own opinion.
And they still made something. You gotta always respect that.
Absolutely.
That
Yes.
as a critic, that you should never lose that they made something. We haven't. I mean, we make our reviews, and I make content for podcasts and things like that. But I haven't made any films or television, and they did. So even if you didn't like it, there's something to respect there, I think, and that's always good to remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in some respect, everyone is a critic. I mean, there are things that I've written before that people are either going to love or hate.
Yeah.
And everybody has an opinion.
I also think the whole idea of a completely objective review is a bit of a fallacy, is a bit of a myth, because we are who we are. All the different things that make us who we are, make our reviews interesting, make us in a way subjective. Like I come from a religious background. That's going to impact my reviews, especially if I see something that's faith-based or things like that. That's going to be a part of how I look at it. And hopefully you develop enough of a following in your reviews that people are like, okay, that's either a trigger point or a positive thing that Rachel always likes. And so I think that's kind of important to remember as well. And sometimes I'll just be upfront with my biases in the beginning of my review, in my review, and I'll just say, I love this, this particular actor. I love this this theme in movies. This is something that I am just inherently going to like a lot of the time, and then explain why either it didn't or did work. So I think that's also kind of important to just lay it out there sometimes. In the review.
I agree. Yeah, like I also had a wooden son named Pinocchio. No, I also am a woodworker. Anyways.
Yeah, I mean, if you just connect. Man, that movie.
I know.
It was so bad.
I know.
I hated it so much. And I'm not even like a diehard Pinocchio person. Like I enjoy it. It's stunning animation. It's a masterpiece. But it's just as far as like my personal love, I don't love it. And so I thought, okay, I might like this movie. No. I hated it so. I just sat there.
Rough.
It was
rough.
I think it's one of the worst movies Disney's ever made.
Ooh, wow.
It's a movie.
It's a movie. They made a movie.
What does Harry Styles say? It's a real movie that feels like a movie. It feels like a movie.
Theaters.
A real go to the theater film movie. Yeah.
Theaters. It's a movie.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's it. That's what Harry Styles was talking about. But sorry, go ahead. Please.
No, I was just gonna say, how did you both kind of get through the pandemic? It was such a hard time as a freelancer. How did that all kind of work for both of you? What do you think, Destiny?
It worked for me fine because I worked at Disneyland and it closed, famously closed for a period of 2 years, nearly like a year and a half, because Downtown Disney opened back
15
up.
months.
So I was actually able, I was actually able to freelance like fully during the closure. Because I was like, wow, I don't have to clock in. You know what I mean? So I was like able to actually sit down, watch a film, create ideas and then freelance. So that's kind of how I handled the pandemic. It was a blessing in disguise that way, because I was then able, if I probably didn't have that period, I probably wouldn't even be like here, like freelancing as much as I had. So that's kind of how I dealt with it. I worked more.
Well, and it was nice because there were opportunities virtually that we hadn't had before, like the fact I was able to go to TIFF virtually, the fact I was, things like
Oh
that.
yes.
Yeah,
First
which
time
was
going to
really
South
good.
by Southwest. Yes, that's when the
Yep.
film yeah, oh my God, I'm so glad you brought that. It's so crazy because time is just not real. But yeah, that was the first time I was able to like do Sundance, because they put it online, and then South by Southwest, and all those people made it accessible. But now we're seeing the reverse of that.
Yeah.
A little bit now, and I'm kind of like, as much as I like to go in person and see people, you get you get body energy, but for people who can't, like you live in Utah, and I can't imagine how many people come through there. I know, Under the Banner of Heaven, Andrew Garfield and them was down there.
Yeah, it's true.
But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, that's
so,
true. What about you, Sari? How was that for you?
Well, the first 3 months, I think I didn't know, the entertainment industry didn't know what to do. I mean, I was so used to pulling these 16-hour days. I live by Disneyland and commute up to
Me
LA.
too.
Yeah, I was just there. My
Our
guys.
neighbors.
Yeah.
We would
Like the
definitely have
91 is a nightmare, the 5, okay. Anyways, go ahead.
totally.
Yeah.
But I feel like the whole it was just like, if I'm not running to LA every day on a carpet, what am I doing with my life? But I think there was a big, I mean, really on a whole other level of just the world was changing, the landscape was changing. I mean, just things on every level were becoming so polarized. But I think it took like a solid 3 months for the entertainment world to figure out that they could do this virtually. I think it was like, finally it was like, oh, okay, we can still do this. It's just going to look a little different and sound a little different. And to me, I really felt like 2020, especially what I as an entertainment journalist, what I actually enjoyed most, it was the year of the documentary. It was the year of the indie film. So all these films that would never gotten a spotlight before, all of a sudden, streaming, everybody was watching, the latest indie movie on Prime Video, and it was getting covered by national and international press. So that part was really cool. And then of course, there was getting back into it was a little, December, we kind of started to get back into it in person, and then that fell off, and then March again. And most in-person events, most studios are really good about COVID precautions, so you do feel safer. But I am glad that we have this hybrid life now where we are able to do things like this, where this has become more of a routine, and something that I think is very special, that I'm glad we can still continue as we move forward.
I started this series during the pandemic, and it's something that I'd thought about doing for a long time, but I finally had the time. There was a lot of things like that, actually. I watched a lot more television because of the pandemic, because I'm normally a movie person, or TV movie person, or a movie person. And I watched a lot of series that, especially 2020, started Bridgerton. I did, I don't know, there was just a long list of different shows that I watched, and Ted Lasso and things like that. And that has been really fun. I haven't been able to keep it as much as I would like, but we're just finishing on Hallmarky's podcast. We started in August of 2020. We started covering the show Heartland, which is on CBC. And
Yeah,
that's also on Netflix.
Canadian horse show.
Yeah.
There's horses on it. Yeah. Okay. I'm there. I'm there with you. Okay.
My friend from Scotland, actually, her name's Michelle. We started in August of 2020 covering Heartland, because it's so intimidating, because the show they're about to start their 16th season in October. And so that's very intimidating to, try to take that on. But we did, and we recorded our last recap of season 15 this last Sunday. We finished. But we would have never started that in the first place if it hadn't been for the pandemic.
Mhm.
But we're finally done.
So
Wow.
proud,
So
so proud.
yeah, yes, that's right.
On behalf of Justin Trudeau, I'm sure he's very excited. I'm sure he's ecstatic.
Yeah,
So-
we joke when any of the actors say things like sorry and like
A
your Canadian
boot.
is showing.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's wild. It's like, are you Canadian? Are you from Wisconsin? Are you from
Yeah.
Minnesota? Like, what is
Sorry.
happening? Yeah, man, it's wild. It's wild hearing Canadians out in the wild because
Yeah.
it's like you sound normal until just now. Just now, you were very straight. Like, okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
So I want to ask both of you, why do you think diversity in film criticism matters? Because some people will say, "Oh, well, a review's a review. Why does it matter?" In it, but what do you think, Sari, about that?
It hugely matters. That's why I'm so proud of the HCA because they really, Scott has made it such a thing to have diversity,
Yeah.
which a lot of critics organizations don't necessarily have. But yeah, I mean, like you were saying, everybody comes from different backgrounds. We all have different experiences growing up, and it is relayed in how we view things and how we see things, and those opinions matter. Voices need to be heard. Different voices need to be heard. Different people need to be seen. So yeah, it's crucial. It is absolutely crucial to the, I think, I mean, even broader than entertainment, but just I think to the world as a whole and what we have to offer. Yeah.
What do you think about that, Destiny?
Yeah, and I also agree, with your HCA kudos there because yeah, it is a super diverse organization. Scott ushered me into, this organization, and I love that, that exposure, but also that not only is the board diverse, but the pick of the awards nominees are diverse in terms of like things that normally don't get the spotlight get nominated is what I mean. So it's not always like, Ted Lasso versus, I don't know, what's Succession, right?
Yeah.
But anyways,
Well, it was so nice to have it
yeah.
be have network and cable one night and streaming one night, because you got to, I don't know, just award different people that don't normally get praised.
Huge.
That was fun.
The Emmys needs to do something about that too. Tiny aside, I think they need to have like a different category for streamers and broadcast, because to put our and network and streamers plus broadcast, because network isn't allowed to tell the same jokes. Like Abbott Elementary being in the same category as Ted Lasso is kind of nonsensical to me,
Right?
because objectively Ted Lasso is the funnier show because it's able to get away with like saucier jokes. Abbott Elementary, they can't really do that. It's still funny, but anyway, so
that's true. That's a point.
Look, if you do an Emmys episode, let me know. Or if you want to do an Oscar episode, let me know. But anyway, back to the diversity. Yeah, it's just so important to have diversity in a review, because I think like for example, if you have like something that's about disabled people, and I'm not disabled in like the tradition, I mean there's no traditional sense, but you know what I mean, like I don't belong to the disabled community. So having somebody who is disabled write a review or be present for that review or whatever that show or TV movie or whatever it is important, because you get that different perspective, and I love reading those types of perspectives. And Andor right now, is a Latino man at the lead of the series, and so I'm like, oh, let me see what the Latin critics are saying about XYZ, right? But yeah, so I think diversity is always important.
Well, I think especially when Hollywood is trying to either make content for that demographic or they are representing that demographic in some way. Like if Hollywood, that's why I think it's so important what we're doing with Hallmarkie's podcast, because because we don't only review Hallmark, we review pretty much all the rom-coms that come out. And it's important to me to have female voices saying, this one's good, this one's bad, this one needs work, try again, you know, kind of a thing.
I don't know
Because-
one female critic that has liked Blonde. I don't, and I'm one of them. I
Mhm.
don't know. Anyway,
Mhm.
that's a whole
Yeah.
conversation for another day. But yes, I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, if they're going to make content that's predominantly for women, we need to have women saying how they're doing. And because otherwise, the only thing that will monitor Hollywood is the box office. And that's not a very good monitor. So I think people
No.
that are like, oh, we don't need critics anymore, whatever, I think they don't really understand what it would be like if there wasn't another voice saying, no, this is not
Yeah.
good enough.
It's so interesting to me because like before I got into it, and please speak to your guys' experience, but like I don't understand necessarily all the critics, like critics are dumb or critics are irrelevant
Yeah.
or whatever. Like of course there's gonna be critics. We all know critics who are like, are you a little bougie? You know what I mean? Like you going a little too much, you know what I mean? Like so those people aside, I'm not talking about those people because they're gonna exist and they have their own place in the world. But for me, like when I was growing up, like I read criticism, but for me, it determined was, is this movie good or not? And am I going to see it right away, or am I going to wait a week or so to see it? Like I'm still going to see it. There's no critic in the world that if even if they don't like the movie, am I not going to see it? Because I do believe people should have their own opinion, which is kind of what we've all been saying this whole time during the chat, is that so what? We didn't like Pinocchio. I wouldn't say you shouldn't see it, but you shouldn't. But please,
Especially when
please
we
go
have
watch
such a
it. Yeah.
deluge of content. I mean,
Right.
nobody can see everything. Nobody can review everything. It's not like back in the day when you
Yeah.
had 5 channels and so somebody could
Right.
theoretically watch everything that's being aired. That
Yeah.
so you need some guidance. You need somebody
Yeah.
to say, okay, maybe check this out. And I mean, that's one of my favorite parts about being a critic is to be able to direct people to sort of the hidden gems or the like Marcel the Shell, for instance, this year that I loved so much. I love being able to tell
I
them, go
love
see it. It's so good.
I'm like, I'm texting the director, because I had to interview him, and I'm
Yeah.
like, you guys better be in the damn nominations for the Oscars this year. Okay, you hear me?
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think about that, Sari?
Oh my gosh, which part?
I don't know.
Just about
critics.
yeah,
You know,
about
relevancy.
critiquing content, particularly for demographics like we were talking about.
yeah,
And
no, and I think kind of to your point, Rachel, what you were saying before too. People, the one thing that I really do love about having a voice as a writer is that people connect to your writing.
Mhm.
People connect to your voice. They can hear you in what you have to say, and so you become kind of like a trusted advisor. They'll go to read your critiques to make those decisions on whether or not, like you were saying, should we wait a week, should we go see it
Yeah.
now, should we? And I appreciate that. That's one thing that I can really say is that I will always be honest 100%. I'm definitely a look on the bright side kind of person, but I will always be honest. And if there is anybody out there reading what I'm writing who agrees with me or reads it to disagree with me, at least I'm there to give them some direction.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you're not honest, like why are we wasting
Right?
time? Like, what is the point? If you're just gonna be kind of saying what is popular, then I mean you shouldn't be like actively trying to be contrarian either, but still.
Yeah.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Merch Store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies Merch Store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
Well, I like to always ask, what is an unpopular opinion that you've had? And how did that what was that experience like? Because the whole reason I started this podcast was because I famously didn't like Shazam, and I got super pushback on it, just put it mildly. It was not pleasant. And it was I thought I've been producing my own content for over a decade. I thought I can handle anything. No, I couldn't. It was very, very overwhelming. And so that's why I wanted to communicate with other female critics and hear their experiences and what they how they responded to this experience. Just the hate, especially with superhero movies. People are so intense about it. I don't, Destiny, what do you think about that? What's an unpopular opinion you have?
I thought about this question, and honestly, I've been spared. Whatever Twitter gods are blessing me from getting. I mean, I got one pushback, and this is so stupid. This is not even film related. This is how dumb. This is how bad, good I am navigating online. Is that I was like, oh, do you cut your pancakes first and then pour syrup, or do you pour the syrup and then cut your pancakes? Which is so stupid, such innocuous, right? I'm a believer in cutting first and then doing the syrup, and people are like, you lose the heat. I had so many people on my case about this particular decision. I was like, what the hell is going on? So anyway, that is not a very serious thing. Maybe I'll post. I did like Harry Styles acting in Don't Worry, Darling, but again, I didn't get much pushback from there, but I have been seeing the opposite reactions. I'm good. I'm gonna skip this one because I've gotten some race ones a little bit, but it's never me really originating it. It's Richard Newby of Hollywood Reporter fame. He's been championing Disa on Rings of Power or whatever, right? And so I was like, yeah, I don't get why people can't understand, there can be Black people in fantasy shows. And so, you always get that one person that's like, oh, but they're supposed to be blonde, and Tolkien didn't know Black people or whatever. It's he might not have, but
Yeah,
who cares?
I do have to say, I have gotten better at handling all of this, because I went rotten on the Batman and I was terrified. I'm like, but I posted my review and I turned off the comments. And then when I posted it on Twitter, I had only friends could reply.
Okay.
And I managed to, and I also waited a week after the deluge of reviews, so mine wouldn't stick out as much. And so good. I managed to survive a negative Batman review, which is very intimidating.
You will not survive here, because I liked the Batman. I want you to hear me. I actually did it had too many endings. They couldn't figure out where to end it, but I did enjoy the Batman. Robert Pattinson said 5 things the whole time. I was living. I loved it.
Yeah.
Yes, Sari.
What about you, Sari? What's an unpopular opinion that you've had?
Oh goodness. Well, I will tell you, it came with the outlets that I wrote for. So I wrote when I was writing for Cracked, and when I was writing for Screen Rant. The people that read the site are very, very invested. So briefly, one of the when I used to write a lot about supernatural, go figure, the sci-fi thing. Oh boy, the pushback, any opinion that I had. I wrote one article on the 15 reasons why supernatural should end. I didn't think it should end. I didn't even agree with that. But if you want some reasons why, my gosh, the barrage of comments.
Yeah, people take those listicles so seriously.
I thought I was gonna get death threats. The worst than this. There's been a few. So there's another one that I wrote for Screen Rant that I thought was actually very funny. I wrote it as satire, and it became a tomato, a Rotten Tomato approved thing. It was with a critique of I Dream of Jeannie, but it was really a satirical piece that I was writing about.
Wow.
It was about an abusive relationship, and it was really a bad case of Stockholm syndrome, and they Rotten Tomatoes posted it as a bad movie. I was like,
Like, why did you turn on me?
I really love I Dream of Jeannie.
That's so
But
funny.
the funny, not the funniest, I would say, because my generation, I'm an Xennial, right? So I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm borderline Gen X and millennial. And there was a piece that I wrote for Cracked back in like 2016 that went crazy viral. And it was basically about movies that I watched growing up that if you look at now, they're really bad. Like
Mhm.
if you go back and you watch Bad News Bears, you're gonna be surprised. I mean, you're gonna look at it from a completely different lens, and you're gonna go, "How was this ever acceptable? And why was Walter
Like the
Matthau
original?
a hero? Like this is not. None of this is okay. None of it." So I
That's
wrote
funny.
again. It was a listicle, and I wrote a piece about things and the hate that I got from people that didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
They had no idea. There was just the messages calling me like a Gen Z snowflake, and you'll have to learn to, and I'm thinking, first of all, you have no idea how old I am. I love all these movies personally. I'm just kind of stating the obvious here that like
Yeah.
back time does some funny things. It
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
puts things in
That's like
perspective.
I didn't end up writing anything on it, but I watched I was thinking of doing a ranking of the Bring It On movies, and that one doesn't hold up very well. There's a lot of awkward stuff.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
they
that's
use
interesting.
yeah.
I went to the college in Bring It On. So like the Toros, right? I went to Cal State Dominguez Hills, which is our mascot is the Toros. It's that same school. And so anyway, like just I hadn't
Mhm.
even rewatched it. I was like, in the 4 years I've been here, I have not rewatched that, but now I'm interested. I've recently rewatched The Mindy Project because it turns 10 this month. And that show has a lot of saucy jokes, so it's kind of like, because I watched it when it was on at the
Uh-huh.
time until it finished. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I Bring It On. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. There's a
I'll take a look.
lot of words we wouldn't use now. Let's put it that way. Um,
That's funny.
but well, let's talk about something that you've made, whether it's something you've written or whatever put together that you're proud of, that you think was really well written or really well done. Destiny, what do you think?
One piece was I found the Black writer on the show Lucifer on Netflix. And I interviewed him about a particular Black Lives Matter tinged episode that Lucifer had in its 4th season, like a little bit of that, and then it got bigger in season 6, the last season. So that was really fun to sit down and track down this writer and talk to him about like he wasn't the only Black writer on the show, but he was like one of 3.
Mhm.
And so that was like really cool to kind of talk to him about his experience. I did that over at Backstage Magazine. And then my second would be the interview I did with Taylor John Smith, who is the lead actor in Where the Crawdads Sing. That what I did have to fight for my life because I did like that movie, and it is very controversial and everything with the author. And I was like, I ain't got nothing to do with that lady. I like the movie,
Me
and that's
too.
where I stick to that. So I know the girlies were eating me up on Twitter for that one, but that's pretty much it. I did that for the
Mhm.
Academy, though. I interviewed the screenwriter for the Academy, which I really liked, and then Taylor John Smith, I did for the Black Cape. That was really nice. They were 2 really great individuals.
That's
Sorry.
cool. That's great. What about you, Sari? What's something you've done that you're proud of?
I think it's so weird because TV is so different than writing, so
Mhm.
there's interviews that I've done for television, like I've gotten to interview Ringo Starr, and that to me, I'm always like, yeah, right. When you
Yeah. No, that's history.
That's
That's
huge. Yeah.
history.
that to me, and I've had really amazing conversations with people, but I think a lot of it really just comes from my own personal connections that I made with people. A lot of it came from writing with Axis. So like I had a great conversation with Ronnie Spector years ago, that I just to hear about her growing up and her life, and of course me being familiar with her from the 80s, but her being reintroduced from generation to generation, and having a deep conversation with her. Pam Grier was another one that I got to, we sat in a hotel for 45 minutes and just talked about her life. And I think what makes me proud is when I write a story that, it's to me, I feel like a kind of like a conduit, like if somebody's entrusting me with their life, their story, and I put it into my words, and that kind of gets out there, and it's something that resonates with them. That makes me proud. So yeah, there's been a few of them. Lou Diamond Phillips was another one. LL Cool J was another one. I mean, there's been a lot out there that I've gotten personal thank yous for just telling a story that they were proud of as well. So that makes me feel like, gosh, if I'm, they've influenced me, and now I'm able to put that out there, and that article can reach someone else, who could be inspired by it and connect that. Like, that's a gift.
Yeah.
It is really special when you can do that. Last year, there was a little indie Christmas movie called See You Next Christmas. Then I get so many emails. Of course, we all do. Emails, check out my indie film, whatever. And most of them are terrible, and most of them you don't have time to watch. But because this was about Christmas, I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot, because I try to cover all the Christmas movies. And I watched it and I really enjoyed it. And so we covered it. We talked about it on the podcast. And then I liked it so much that I interviewed the director and writer, Christine Weatherup. And then this April, we did another episode on it. And then we had her on as our guest for our patron event that we do, patron watch along that we do. And she just talked about how much it meant to her that our support, and that we were, promoting the film to other Christmas movie junkies like ourselves. And it does feel good when you can, especially if it's something that, that you really like, and that you want to promote it, and when you have those interactions with people, where it's like, that's like the dream, when you have that kind of symbiotic relationship between critic and creator, when it works out. It's great. So that is one that I'm definitely proud of. That I'm also very proud, as like I said, we started covering more television for Hallmarkies podcast, and I'm very proud of the Heartland coverage, and that we finished. But also when And Just Like That was coming on, I had been trying to think of ways to grow our audience as a podcast, and I kind of thought, could we cover And Just Like That? Is it just because, obviously Hallmark is typically very conservative, very, G-rated, and this would be not that. And so I reached out to my friend Jax, and she was up for it, and it was hard because this started in December, which is obviously really intense for me. But we did it, and then we were almost finished covering Sex and the City, because we covered In Just Like That, and then we covered it, and it was such a risk, but I was so happy that it did well, and that our audience responded to it. And like I said, we're almost finished with that show, and then we're gonna cover the movies, we're gonna cover Carrie Diaries and things like that, just because Jax and I have so much fun doing it, and because it seems to be doing well. So I'm very proud of that I took a chance, took a risk, covering content that it could have backfired big, and I'm just grateful that it didn't, and so that's definitely one from recently that I thought of. So yeah, this question's kind of funny for me, because I know some creatives, not that I even consider myself a creative, but are so hard on their own work, But for me, I love because I have such great experiences with people like you, or other, the co-hosts or the guests I'm interviewing, that I'm very, very biased. I was just like, it was so fun. It's great.
Yeah.
I am not objective when it comes to my own work. I admit it outright.
That's good. Let me get some of that. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me get some of that. Let me get some of that,
Yes.
Lord. Oh my gosh. That's
Well,
so funny.
Well, thank you to both of you. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed getting to know both of you. We'll definitely have to keep in touch. And thanks for coming on and talking about you sharing your experience. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. This was so fun. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Thank
Yeah.
you for having us. This was
Yeah.
great.
So, Destiny, how can people follow you, your content, everything?
Wow. Yeah. I am on Twitter I have a website at destinydelights.com. But I haunt Twitter. I need everyone to understand I do haunt Twitter, and I'm at Destiny Dreadful, as in Penny Dreadful. Did I do that? Yeah, on Twitter at Destiny on Twitter. A lot of people was like, why Dreadful? And I was like, well, I tweet too much, but also I love Penny Dreadful. That's where that name came from. And I love alliteration. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Very good. What about you, Sari?
I make all of my handles are different. I make it very difficult for people.
Okay. Well, just
I don't
send it.
conform. Mostly I am on Instagram at the Savvy Scribbler, TheSavvyScribbler. And then of course on Twitter, ask_Sari.
Great.
So
Well, you can give all of the handles. We'll put it all in the description so you can send them to me. So that'll be great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. Also, make sure you're following the Hallmarkies podcast. Got lots of fun stuff going on over there. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps us out a lot. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have the Patreon group, which we talked about a little bit, and also the merch store where you can get the Female Film Critics panel merch. So check that out. And thanks so much, ladies. This was so much fun. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye, everyone.